Hey, welcome back, my friends. Today is a special day. I'll be painting with Rebelle 4, doing a review of oil painting in Rebelle 4. If you're unfamiliar, Rebelle 4 is a software for digital illustration, digital painting, digital drawing, just like you would find in Artrage, Procreate, Heavy Paint, Photoshop, or whatever, right? There's so much stuff out there, and it's all interesting. So, you know, with my channel, I'm a huge supporter of Artrage. I think it's just one of the most underrated and really successful pieces of software at simulating traditional media. And one of the other kind of darlings of natural traditional painting, wet media simulation for me is Rebelle. They have it's a software made by Escape Motions. It's they're not the big guys like Photoshop, or they're not the big guys like they have all the fanfare like Procreate. And they're a piece of software, again, like Artrage, that I really think has a lot going for it. And for me, my background is oil painting, and I love digital media that feels like that. And that's why I've always been such a big fan of Artrage. Well, what we have here in Rebelle 4 is the introduction of oils. They always had acrylic and watercolor and all the other stuff, but adding oils really changes the game for what this software can offer as compared to something like Artrage or Procreate or whatever. And so I'm not going to do too much of a comparison. I just kind of want to speak to the virtues of this software, because in the past, I think it was back in October, I did a comparison between Rebelle 3, Artrage 6, and Procreate. And in that, I found that Artrage was superior for oil painting. This is a digital oil paint software showdown. And, Procreate, I felt like couldn't even come close to Artrage. In Rebelle 3, I threw in there because the acrylics was comparable. I mean, you could add a lot of water to the acrylics. If you go here, if I click back into the software, you go to you can set the wetness of the acrylics. And if you really make them really squishy and wet, then it kind of feels like oils, But this time they have an actual oil setting, the oiliness, there it is. And they have all of these things here, which I want to talk to you about. So this portrait done in Rebelle 4 is one of my first, like I said, and I think it's my first portrait I've done in the software. So I felt very good about it, considering this is like a first run. Let me show you one thing before I'm actually going to demo this in front of you so you can get a feel for it. But if I click over here, here's the actual finished portrait. And I really like how it came out, and I was really feeling it. And to me, it feels like real paint, and that's what we're going for, right? Here is a Photoshop portrait that I did. So here's like Rebelle, Photoshop. Here's a mix of Artrage and Photoshop together. And because you kind of get the best of both worlds there. And then here is an Artrage portrait. So I kind of have all three. Let me let that one load in. It's kind of a super high res one. So this is Artrage. This is Artrage Photoshop mixed. This is Photoshop alone. And then this is Rebelle. And you can see that each one has a little bit of its own feel. I think it would be worthwhile for me to paint the same exact portrait or landscape or still life using each software for a real authentic comparison. Do it timed, where it's like 20 minutes for each one, etc. And I will do that. I'll do another comparison, because as this software is updated by all these companies, stuff's always coming out. They're updating the mobile, they're updating the desktop, they're updating this, they're adding new features. And it's sort of like an arms race of sorts. They want to get the best stuff out to everybody as quickly as they can. And I love that, because whenever they do that, we just get to play with all these cool new toys. So let's play with this. Let's play with this live. What I'm going to do is just show you kind of from scratch. So I'm just going to create a new document. And for the purposes of today, I think I'm just going to make a 15 by 15 inch canvas, 200 pixels per inch, not like a super high res canvas. So I'm just going to say create. And what you'll see is the default here was just sort of a watercolor paper. But if I click on the canvas down in the bottom corner, I can select what paper type that's here. They have more paper types you can buy from their web store or whatever, but I usually feel like this is sufficient. So you get this kind of deckled edge, or kind of the broken edge from they're trying to simulate that, like, hey, here's like a real thing. Like I'm simulating like a real piece of canvas or linen or whatever. And that does, it does help. It does help make it feel a little more earthy than just kind of like, because everything else is kind of like Photoshop-esque. I mean, if you look at this, these menus, they're kind of a weird hybrid. It looks like Artrage's menus are very pictorial and very colorful. Photoshop's menus are very wordy and like there's little icons everywhere, and then there's a lot of depth in the menus, and everything's very gray and kind of like industrial. This is a really kind of like a mix of both. It kind of feels like a little bit of kind of in the middle. And so let's just start here. I'm going to grab oils, and I'm just going to show you. There's an interesting thing here. If you hold shift, in Artrage, what that does is it changes your brush size. But here it gives you a way to draw straight lines. And I like how you can pivot that line any way you want. So it's not just a straight line. You can choose the angle of approach. It's kind of cool. But use the bracket keys to enlarge your brush. So this is kind of just some samples of some of their default brushes. And let me just go through that real quick. And as I do that, I'm going to change the color or value as I go so that you can kind of see each one distinctly and kind of how they work together and how the paint piles up. Try to make this nice and big so you guys can get a good feel for it. And then I'm going to zoom in quite a little bit so you can also see the texture a little better. Each one of these default brushes has its own sort of vibe and the way that it's simulating real paint. And some of them I like better than others. These ones that are called the thick wet and the thick dry, I'm not too fond of because they have there's like so chunky, it's like if you were painting with a brush that should have been thrown away, kind of. The edge especially of the brushstroke gets so broken. It's just not my style. And I'm going to skip this one because that's a handmade brush that I made, and then show you just a couple more. And then there's the knife. Let's see what we can get in here. And this knife with a little bit of texture on it. Yeah, so there's that, and then there's a flat and a rake and the dabber. All right, I don't really know what that is. Is that like a Martha Stewart style, like a foam? I don't know what that is. Faux finish or something. But I guess I could see like if you took like a rag or something, we're dabbing texture into your surface. Yeah, people do that. Okay, so that's all the default options in the thick paint. And what you can see is you have size, loading, and oiliness for each one of those brushes. Then you have the thin paint, and I'm just going to quickly go through those so you get a feel for it. I don't need to be super over the top and show you what each one of these do, because these are just they're just like less impasto. They're just a little bit less chunk. They do mix, like you can see it mixes with the paint that's down, and it mixes with the thickness that's there, but it's not like adding a whole bunch of chunk to it, so, but I do like the interaction is still there. There's even a fan brush for all you Bob Ross fans out there. And you can go into the brush and you can change, like it's called like the brush creator. If you click on this, and then you can change, like you can say, oh, I want to rotate that so I can, make the angle of approach different or whatever. So minimize that there, and you go through, and there's like so basically the thick and the thin paint, and that's what you got. But look at this range of texture. It is kind of crazy when you think about how much is happening here. And how much of it really and truly looks like that oily, buttery three-dimensionality of oil paint. There's a lot here that works for me in that regard. Like I feel really encouraged by it. And I feel a similar giddiness to Artrage when I say, ooh, I want to use that. Like I want to go play in that, right? So I think that while I like all of this and while it's really nice, what I want to do, I'm just going to hold the space bar and pull down a little bit, and I'll show you my own brush. So I use my own brush head texture and created my own sort of brush settings. And I found through that, I found my favorite brush. So, I think we all have a certain look we're trying to get when we paint. And my own brush was what got me closest to that. Not to say that these weren't really cool, but this one was more like exactly like I wanted. So I like what's there, and you don't have to go create your own brushes if you want it to be good looking, but you do have the ability to. And what's really awesome about this is it's as easy as just loading a brush head, loading a grain, and you're off. And you can change these settings. You can change a lot. You can get in here and really tinker and mess with smudge and glaze and all these different things. And it's worth its own video, right? Like as I have done with Artrage, you can do here. There's a ton of depth for each one of these settings and how that applies. But I'm already having fun with that. The brush creator, while it has depth, it makes sense. There's a nice logic to it, and it works. And it's, as you can see, you can get some really good outputs really fast. My computer is it's a kind of a nice gaming computer. So, it's not like super high end or anything, but it's nicer than what you would just, probably pull off the shelf at Best Buy or something. It's a little more hand built because I built it for editing, streaming, and painting. And it does dual purpose with gaming as well. So for a little bit, when I have a little bit of free time, which is not too often, but it's nice to have that. That said, when I'm painting in Rebelle 4, I can hear my fans spool up because this is a software that can really take advantage of my graphics card, and I like 32 gigs of RAM and all of that. So I think it's one of those softwares that you can tell it like Corel Painter, like it might take advantage of a little more of like a nice PC setup. But unlike Corel Painter, I actually love painting in this software. So I would say that if you're kind of a fan of Corel, just go get this, because this is like better and way better and more affordable, and it's just awesome. So I think it's really good. So a little preview of my overall thoughts. That said, we've talked a little bit about oil brushes, thick and thin. We've talked about creating your own brushes, but let me clear this out. See, layer, clear layer. And I just want to show you a couple of things. So I'm going to pick, hopefully not too obnoxious of a color, but one of my favorite colors, this kind of like turquoise color. And it's almost like cerulean blue. And I just want to show you the different things. So you have paint here, and then you have like the paint with a little mix, and then you have paint and blend. And you can see that the way that they apply the paint is just a little bit different. And this one doesn't even do anything, right? It's just more of like a blender. So let's start with this, what we've got here, and then let's see what happens when we add another color into it, right? And look at, here's just paint. Here's paint. And then here's like the blender. It's like a little bit of blend going on. And it's pressure sensitive, the amount of pickup that you'll get there. But then on this one, you have a lot more pickup going on. So there's a lot more interaction with what's on the canvas. And then this one's just pretty much just a blender, like I said. So you can play with these. Basically what I've found is I'll go with paint and mix, and then I'll finish with paint and blend. So this one kind of acts like you're painting wet on wet a little bit. It gets a little of that interaction, which makes it look and feel like real oil paint. And then when you want to get a little in there and start knocking things around, making things look a little bit smoother, you can do the paint and blend. And it looks and works just like oil paint. And you can do a similar thing with Artrage, and then they also have like that palette knife option. Here what they've done is it's a pretty elegant solution. Basically you have no interaction with paint on canvas to total interaction with paint on canvas. And you have this gradient of these 4 different levels of interactivity. And then you have the eraser. So you can use your pre-selected brush, like you make a custom brush head and then just click here and it's an eraser. You can do that in Artrage as well, by the way, but just wanted you to know that these are kind of what's going on. And then on top of that, you can play with the oiliness and the size or whatever. So I'm not going to get into every setting here, but I just wanted you to see this. So I will do an in-depth review of like how to work on making your own brushes, how to customize everything to your heart's content, how to make my personal recommendation, set up for canvas, brushes, mixers, all that stuff. But that's going to take a little bit of time. And I really honestly have had the software for just a couple days and have had really hectic days this week. So I haven't had really a second to chew on it like I want to. But that said, all you need to know is what's in front of you, which is this is what it looks like on paper. This is what your mark looks like when you put it down. This is how marks interact with each other. And when you guys who come from traditional painting backgrounds, this should be your delight. You're like, ooh, I want to play with that, right? Because that's what paint does. Like that's what wet paint does. And I know what that feels like. And that feels like what I expect it to feel like. And I'm excited to try that. And not only does it kind of behave like you'd expect, the overall harmony of the textures and the blending, it looks good, right? And that's the thing. So here's the one caveat is that my favorite brush in the whole setup of all of these awesome brushes is my own. And that's just because I know what I want and I know how to get it, right? Because I've been painting for 3 decades and I just know what I want to do with it. So what's cool though is like I said, it's very easy to make your own brushes, and I'll go ahead and make my own brush set and release those, first to my Patreon or whatever, but I'll get them out there. I'll get them out there soon. But the brushes that are in the software already, they're good. They're like, it's not as much my favorite, but they're really good. So see, they're great. It's great. There's no question. It's awesome. But as you can tell, it's just not the same feel as these. These to me feel like when I have my brush in hand and I'm going for it. So these ones that are pre-built are a little bit, maybe this one's a little too chunky, or this one's a little too bristly, or a little too square. There's just a little bit of the shape. I like this kind of flat, either a flat or a filbert, and I like it to have that aspect. And that's just kind of my preference, but you'll get to play with it and see what you like. That said, I want to show you one more thing. So the acrylics, they have similar shape brushes and they work really well. But I want to show you one more really, really cool thing. Because even though this is just an oil painting demo, I have to say that when I start oil painting, I usually get a big amount of turpentine on my brush, and I will like really loosely sketch in, if I'm painting a portrait or whatever, I'll like really loosely sketch it in, and maybe someone will look at it and be like, can't even tell what it is. But for me, it's like all I need. I've got the marks I need to be able to do what I need to do. And what's super cool is that the watercolors to me look like turpentine loosened oil paint. And as you can see right now, as I'm talking, the paint is dripping. It's like, it's bleeding down, and it's kind of like, and all that's happening here because I have over on the far top right side, I have the tilt. This is like simulating the tilt of my canvas. So I'm like tilting it down. So let me just show you a little bit more. I'm going to get a little bit bigger brush and just kind of lay in some big marks just so you can kind of see. Because like I said, when I oil paint, I start with a lot of terp, loosen some paint, and I'll do my sketching, my draftsmanship stage of the drawing or the painting with terp loosened paint. And so what I get is this kind of underpainting of real watery, transparent, and pooling marks. But I really love that because it creates an underlying texture that I can paint on top of. And for me, I don't really like to paint on a white canvas so much because I like like everything in my life is a little bit of a mess. Like I really think like everything is just, and my wife is always trying to clean up or get me to clean up my space or whatever. And my studio is always kind of just a little bit, so that the beautiful disaster is kind of like what's happening on my canvas all the time. And I kind of like to start with that. And so similar to my real painting, I love having a beginning that looks sort of like this. And then I can jump in with my paint, my oil paint, and be like, okay, so let's find our dark values, right? We just start lay those in, and just being able to lay that in right on top of that really like loose terp vibe. It feels, again, to me like a great representation of what happens to me when I have my oil paints. And when I do this, I'll leave a little bit of the underpainting showing through in every oil painting I do. And it's because I love so much of that happenstance of the watery kind of texture of what's underneath. So I know it's not like the oil tool. I'm kind of showcasing the watercolors, but as you could see, the watercolors are really the thing that Rebelle has always been known for. So to kind of ignore that, their watercolors are off the charts good. But now they have really good oils to go with it. And that's a pretty powerful combo. So I wanted to just show that to you guys, and then show you how I use it. And that's a preview, because there's a lot left to unpack, and there's a lot left to kind of get into in terms of details. And I'm going to come out with all that very soon. I just wanted to get this brief intro into like, how oils work with this particular software, and how that's, how that compares to maybe Corel Painter, or how that might compare to Artrage. And I think if, someone might be asking a question like, hey, Daniel, you do a lot of stuff with Artrage, you do a lot of stuff with Photoshop. How does this compare? Well, here's what I would say is that, I think Artrage and Rebelle are in their own league, and there's things about Artrage that are like, are superior in the oils, and there are things about Rebelle that are superior in the oils. And there's difference too there, where it might be a performance thing where you need to have like a little bit better computer to get like the absolute best out of Rebelle. I'm not sure though. I haven't tested it on my lower end machine yet, which I need to do. Whereas I think Artrage doesn't use any GPU acceleration for its software. But no matter what about that, the point is that this works, and it's really good. And I would, if I was stuck making the choice, if I had to, if I could choose two pieces of software, I used to always say, oh, it's Artrage and Photoshop, no question. And now that's a really tough choice, because would I choose Artrage and Rebelle or Artrage and Photoshop? I don't know. I mean, there's like, you kind of have to have all three, because the things that Artrage does really well, nothing else does quite the same way. And now Rebelle though it's getting in there with what's, clearly it does stuff that, both Artrage and Rebelle do stuff that Photoshop can't do. And then I think both Artrage and Rebelle do things that better than Painter can do. And I think, so I think, for like the natural media simulation kind of tool, you're going to want to use either this or Artrage, no question. And I could see people having really good dialogue about both. If you're into watercolor though, you have to choose Rebelle, because they have the best digital watercolor simulation period, right now. But like, who knows what's going to happen next month, or a couple months when Artrage has its new update. It's like this, that, like I said, it's just that thing where everybody's updating all the time, and it just makes it awesome to be a painter, because there's just so many cool things that we get to play with. But all I would say is it's too early for me to make any final judgments, but I do feel like there's a huge need for people to take this software seriously, to play with it, to paint with it. Because if you're just watching me doodle around and know that I haven't had this software but for a few days, and I have only maybe done 2 paintings so far with it. And you can see the fluidity of it. You can see the way that it works. And yeah, there's a lot of like carryover from using other softwares and stuff. But if you saw me lay down that color in the beginning using the watercolor, and then you see me jump in real quickly with the oils and seeing how they mix naturally, and see the kind of the little happenstance that happens and the flicks and twists at the end of the brush stroke and stuff like that, that really makes it feel like real paint. Well, you got to know that that's pretty special. And I think it works really well. So I just wanted to say, take this one seriously. If you want, after seeing this review, you're like, oh, I'm curious, go to their website, grab a demo of it and check it out. I think the demo limitations are like a watermark and export stuff like is limited and stuff, but you don't need any. I mean, for a demo, you just want to see how it works, see if it runs well on your machine. Let me know in the comments if you guys do demo it, and let me know, what kind of machine you have and see how well it runs. That's one of the things I just haven't been able to test. So, I mean, here's again, just a real quick sketch with this, and it was just a pure fun. So that's the main thing, is the fun factor. But you want to make sure that like you're investing in something that's going to have a high ceiling. So as you continue to learn, you're not going to just bump into that ceiling and be like, wow, I really outgrew this really fast. Well, I don't think you're going to get there with this. This is going to be one of those pieces of software that gets richer with the more use you have with it. I think that's something like I've continued to find with Artrage, and I would imagine I'll find it with this too. So that said, I would say give it a try. This is definitely a win. And I think the oil paints are a huge improvement over just the option of having acrylic in the past. And as you can see, and I'm using my own custom made brush, but it took me like a minute to create it. I think this is a total win. I'm going to zoom in up close and just show you guys like, the up close chunky stuff. And up close, it does feel like that buttery kind of chunkiness that oils really have. And you can go into the settings for the canvas too. These are the visual settings, and you can say like, you can change the impasto depth as just on a slider here. If you feel like, oh, it's kind of gross, like it's too chunky, I don't like that, you can take that impasto depth down. You can take the gloss down. You can sort of take the special sauce out of it, so to speak, and then put it back in. It's just on a slider, so that's a nice way to work it. And then you can also, on the canvas itself, where was that? There's like I think it's down here. Yeah, canvas. You can chill out the canvas texture a little bit, and you can chill out on the paint texture a little bit. So you can kind of modulate how much of that natural chunkiness you want to get, not just through your brush strokes, but through these settings over here. So there's some cool options there for stylistic approaches and what you might want to have to do with a client or whatever. So very cool stuff. I'm going to get way more into it for more of like a comprehensive review, and I'll touch more on the watercolor and some of the other tools. But for now, just as a what's going on with this oil painting, and I think this is really, really cool. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to open up, I think this one. Just get rid of that. And just to show you one like final step here, here's like a little bit more of a finished painting. And you can see here again, like I did the watercolor thing in the background, and look how cool, like it created all that pooling, the realistic dripping, and it all like kind of gets more concentrated and stuff toward the bottom. And then I created a layer on top of that, just a paint on top of that. I knew that I wanted this kind of V shape in my composition. So I wanted that dark V shape to kind of like hold the image. And then I painted this kind of like blooming of the face and this like floral kind of stuff out of that that dark V shape. And so with that, just had so much fun. And I love, again, the watercolor kind of realistically pooling in the edges and all this stuff as it picks up the actual canvas, and just awesome. So hopefully you guys will give it a shot. Please let me know what you think of it. Were you impressed? How do you feel like it compares to the other stuff you've used? Are you a longtime user of this, or is it new for you? Please let me know. One thing I wanted to point out, and this is again because I'm kind of new to it, but I felt like the reference images, I couldn't figure out how to get multiple references into one. Like I wanted to do a landscape, right? So I was like, I wanted that, and I wanted a couple other references to create my own composition, but I couldn't figure out how to get multiple reference images into the composition or into the project. So I'm gonna keep working on that. Like I said, it's a new software for me, but I'm gonna dig deep and try to get into this and see what happens. So I'll be posting along the way, and hopefully you enjoy it. Take care, guys, and best wishes. Bye-bye.